So I'm in the process of writing my next book, and the working title of the book is Whole. The book is my attempt at building a scaffolding or a structure for people to think about their whole developmental journey, based on the assumption that none of us are simply a makeup of our individual parts. That so often we want shortcuts to development, but we know that our development, our growth, our learning, our whole lives have many different interconnected parts that relate to one another, but so often we struggle to connect those parts. So many things out there are focused on one piece, for example, personality or behaviors or my experiences or my resume. But the reality is that, if you think about your developmental story, the story that you tell when you get with someone that you trust, is that you know that those parts are connected, that your experiences, the lessons that you've learned, the things that you're good at, your failures, your places where you've let people down, moments of trauma, things with your family, things that are happening at work, where you're going and why, the people that are surrounding you at certain points in your life. Those things are all playing together into this whole narrative of who you are. And I liken it in the book. I'm excited to get some feedback as we move forward on what this book will be about. Because this is a challenge. It feels like something I feel completely underqualified to tackle, but I felt like it's something that's been important for a long time. And what's interesting is that so often in life we want linear answers to questions. We want to say, okay, here's the question, now answer it for me. When in fact I might suggest that sometimes the journey forward or the pathway forward is more about the questions than it is the answers. A willingness to ask tough questions. I had a student ask about an assignment for class for tomorrow, a doctoral student, who said, does Dr. McKenna, I heard this on the street, want me to focus on this part or that part? My answer to that, if I could have spoken into that, would have been yes, probably both. Move toward the questions. And I think of it, the metaphor that I love related to development of a whole person is less about a map with linear connections between point A and point B, and more about scaffolding. And if you think of scaffolding on a building, scaffolding is a way for us to get access to parts of the building that we know need something, but we can't reach it without that. So we might see from the ground floor that the windows are dirty, or we might experience that we have a leak in the siding of our house that's causing mold to grow. But unless we build scaffolding and a structure for getting there, up to clean the windows or to fix the siding, we can't do anything. And so if you think about, this is going to be my horrible attempt to draw. So this is our building, and then think of what scaffolding looks like, whether it's a skyscraper or even on a house. And imagine that you have these ways of accessing the outside and accessing the inside, as opposed to that linear kind of approach. Is that the book is going to focus on what we know from not just research, but also historical works on different kinds of folks and psychology on some of the important aspects of what it means to be whole. And I'll give you one example of one of the things that the book is going to deal with, some of the foundational, philosophical, psychological principles of what it means to develop a whole person, including vulnerability and questions about what it means to be human and to be a leader. So that's going to be addressed, but also to provide a pathway forward through these conversations. So imagine that this building, as an example, that we encourage someone to build a network of support. This is one of the things that the book will focus on, is trying to help you understand, how do I build a network of support around me? And so we call it strategic networking. So it's a strategic network of relationships who will help support you in whatever your next challenge looks like. Well, one of the interesting things is that so often it's hard to know what kinds of support to build unless you know where you're going and why. And so to get into some questions around what we describe as calling and purpose. You don't know who needs to be around you to support you unless you have some understanding of where you're going and why. So to start with this, if we have no indication of what it is you're trying to build, or where you feel called to serve, or who you feel called to serve, it's difficult to do this. But it's also the reason why scaffolding is so interesting. So you could include things like my motivations here. You could include my experience, my past experience, my competencies or my skills, or even how I invest in developing other people. Like, are you willing to invest and develop other folks? Is another piece. But imagine this. Imagine we walk up to a building and we see that we have windows that are spotted, that have spots. It isn't sometimes until, so we see that these spots are there, so we clean those windows, we come back the next day and the spots are back. We're thinking, well, what's going on? So I got focused on dealing with my calling and purpose, but the windows are still dirty. And then all of a sudden we climb up to the top and we realize that one of the reasons that the windows are dirty is because there's a hole in the roof. And so we've got water dripping down on those windows every single day, so we realize we got to patch up the roof. But things change in the midst of that. So our journey up the building and kind of working on this over the years looks less like a linear path and more like we need to continue to deal with these things with a prescribed direction of how we might do this more intentionally. So this is what the book's going to be about, and looking forward to getting insight from those of you that are interested in having a conversation about this, about what it means to develop a whole person, to think more systemically about the different pieces, but also to provide a logical pathway forward that could be prescribed, even though your story may change the direction and the pathway forward. So we're excited about what's coming next.